The early morning was really intense at the very end of last night. The United States Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and that's a name we've mentioned here in several videos, spoke out again. Look, when Donald Trump last weekend mentioned that guy from Colombia and so on, it's already a clear demonstration that these three countries, as I've been saying in several videos, Venezuela, Colombia, and Brazil, are going to have some really complicated days ahead, right, in the coming days. The Deputy Secretary Christopher Landau also made a statement. The former Secretary of the United States also mentioned Colombia, Brazil with Lula, together with Venezuela, money coming from there. The Carvajal case. Notice that on Friday, after Carvajal's plea deal exploded, Trump made a statement. And now, several figures from the United States as well, right? They're exposing every other day everything that's been happening. Guys, keep sharing this video, hit that like button. It helps our work, spreads the word, and welcomes you to our family. Look, we kind of have to walk on eggshells, right? Kind of walking on eggshells because, we're not living in normal times. Actually, I say we've never really been in normal times. Right, freedom of speech, right? We had it years ago, before President Bolsonaro, but it was about 60%. It was never like it is over there in the United States of America. Here, we do have the freedom to say whatever we want, anything. Our criticism of public officials. And when it comes to public officials, right, who are present in various spheres. Yeah, in this country, we have to remember that they work for us. Not the other way around. Brazil seems to have become an empire with an emperor. That all the half-laws we used to have, now there are no laws left at all. This case here is a very serious case. Very serious. There were statements from the duty officer after Alexandre de Moraes requested it, right? For the federal police to make a statement that they will punish, that they will arrest, that they will... People keep discussing this case. But Felipe Martin's lawyer, Dr. Paulo Faria, who is also Daniel Silveira's lawyer, was inside the White House, talked to authorities. This is a case that the United States is keeping a close eye on. A Brazilian woman who became a naturalized American ended up being persecuted in there, according to lawyer Paulo Faria. So I ask, who do we trust? This man is a very serious, honorable person, right? And he said it, right? I was at the White House yesterday where they confirmed the FBI is now involved in the Felipe Martins case. And there's more. He also, right, wrote, I confirmed what were once just assumptions. As they say, even in Brazil, the snake is going to smoke. The FBI lawyer in the Felipe Martins case spoke out, right? He gave all these statements, it became a news report. Look here. The United States Customs and Border Protection reported that the former presidential advisor, Felipe Martins, did not enter the country. The situation was so absurd that the police chief in the case, I won't even mention names, he says, according to him, right, that Felipe Martins set all this up, anticipating his own arrest. He even ended up in solitary. These are unrelated things. Customs stated, right, that Alexandre de Moraes cited an incorrect record to justify Martin's months-long imprisonment. The agency said the inclusion of this inaccurate record in official systems is still being investigated. Because it's obvious that they're going to try to spread all kinds of narratives because it's a very serious case. That causes problems. I was seeing statements in the press from Flavia, right, which is another serious case, saying that she's lying, that Moraes acted correctly, according to the professor from the University of São Paulo. A big newspaper, right, in that project, with evidence from fact-checking agencies. Man, this is, look. Check out how wicked our press is, guys. Felipe Martins is a defendant in the Supreme Federal Court for alleged involvement in a coup plot investigated by the federal police, who found he left Brazil and entered the United States via Orlando. The federal police confirmed it. But later, their confirmation fell apart because he didn't enter. He wasn't in the United States. I say in several videos, even if he had been in the United States. What crime did this man commit by walking alongside the president, whom he advised? Man, a lot of people will get arrested. So we can tell it's just a narrative, right? Moraes ordered Felipe Martins' preventive arrest in 2024 after United States immigration. Records showed he entered the country with President Bolsonaro's entourage and a possible flight risk resulting from this trip. But guys, why did Felipe? They can't explain why Felipe Martins wasn't allowed to travel. Notice that they arrested Moro Cid because of the vaccine card issue. Then it was proven that the issue with the card. The case was even closed, but his arrest was used for other arguments. More narratives against the man who wins by a landslide, Ignacio, in a striking way. Because they're going to arrest Bolsonaro, leave him locked up there, nice and quiet, silent, not using social media. Lula can use various narratives. He used to say so himself. We're going to use whatever narratives are necessary to prevent, right, as they say, the far right, these people from coming back. Man, look, I really want to say a lot of things, but I have to hold myself back here. But thank God, these three characters here are almost in the same situation. Some in a more desperate situation, like Maduro, another in a somewhat desperate situation. And the one in the middle there that you are seeing, in a situation, well, we could say almost reaching desperate, but it's still desperate. We could say, look, Christopher Landau, he is the Deputy Secretary of State of the United States. He is the number 2 in Marco Rubio's department. He spoke yesterday about the case. Look, I am very happy that Colombia's judicial institutions have stood firm against the blatant attempt to criminalize politics. The past few years have shown us, in countries ranging from Colombia to Brazil and even our own United States, that the legal system can be used as a powerful weapon to distort the democratic process. I congratulate the Colombian people on this important day in their history, when the rule of law proved more powerful than the individuals who sought to abuse it for political purposes. Former President Álvaro Uribe. Right, so what ended up happening? Their Supreme Court ended up ruling that he is not guilty of the accusations that they tried to fabricate against him. I'll bring it here for you. They eventually granted full freedom since we were facing the same problem in Colombia, right? Of them arresting an innocent person. Eduardo Bolsonaro even said, look, President Uribe, who is the one in the middle here, almost eliminated. All the presidents who eliminate cartels from that filth, right, from that garbage, end up in a complicated situation. He tried to eliminate the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. Look, he almost eliminated the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, drastically reduced the areas of coca cultivation. He was brave, and even when those terrorists sought refuge in another country, he didn't hesitate to hunt them down. His acquittal yesterday, after years of legal proceedings, is a happy day. Democracy breathed in Latin America. May this example from Colombia be followed by Brazil, where the witch hunts by Moraes and Lula still persist. Eduardinho Bolsonaro putting it here. Then he posted a photo, right, of him together with Uribe years ago. They were together several times, right? In other words, he could be an important candidate coming again in the next elections in Colombia, which I think coincides with Brazil's first Brazil's, then Colombia's. So, look, the United States is already taking action. Their Supreme Court saw that it could cause problems. They don't want to have the same problems that the ministers here are having. And just so you understand, I'll put it here for you, including those in the salon. Look, Colombia was going to get a huge tariff, more or less like the one Brazil got, 40%. What did they decide here? Look, Senator Bernie Moreno from the United States says that after talking with Trump, there will be no tariff on Colombia. Trump is going to sanction the narco president, officials, and their families. In other words, Trump, instead of sanctioning Colombia, because he knew that sanctioning the country, for example, creates certain narratives. For people like Lula to keep using that, it's that case there, to try to benefit politically, Lula didn't benefit at all, okay? Yeah, what happens? You have Globo, you have Estadão, you have Fola, attacking 24 hours a day to be able to say, no, look, he's the one who ended up coming out as the winner in this case. And that's not it. So, Trump is going to act now. Well, let's act directly against these people. And this could affect Lula. He and his family, including Yanya and others, could face sanctions. Children. Imagine Trump having full access there. The privileges. How did Lula's children become billionaires, rich millionaires, let's say millionaires overnight, right? He used to be a zoo cleaner for elephants, right? And they built up that fortune. The former United States Treasury Undersecretary also spoke out, right? Terrorism financing. The United States Senate stated that the regime of the Venezuelan drug trafficker financed political campaigns in Colombia, Mexico, and also in Brazil. He spoke here yesterday. That was extremely widely reported by the press around the world.
When you look at the regime that fostered the socialist plague that spread throughout Latin America, it's the Venezuelans. It's the corrupt money from the Venezuelans that funded the Petro campaign. They found out that they funneled money to Mexico, funneled money to the...
Look here. He clearly says Venezuela. The Venezuelan regime supported the campaigns in Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil. They already have detailed access. Then Marco Rubio made a statement yesterday also mentioning Brazil. Look, Rubio mentions Moraes in an interview and announces more measures soon from the Trump administration.
The answer is that the state of...
Hey, I'm going to tell you guys here, okay. The answer is that the democratic rule of law in Brazil is breaking down. You have these activist judges, and one in particular, who has not only gone after Bolsonaro, but has also tried to exercise extraterritorial claims even against American citizens, or against someone posting online from within the United States, and has really threatened to go even further in this regard. So, there will be a response from the United States to this. That's right. We'll have some announcements in the next week or so about what additional measures we intend to take. But it's not just the trial. It's another chapter, he adds, right? Here, of a kind of growing campaign of judicial oppression. That tried to reach American companies, even people operating outside the United States. That statement from, Marco Rubio, I think it was even from a few days ago, but it's still relevant, especially in the moment we're living in right now. What's interesting that we notice is that after Hugo Carvajal's plea bargain, things started to change a lot. Change in a way huge. Elisa, talking here with our dear Paulo Figueiredo, also talked about this, right? The journalist says that Lula is in despair. In a possible arrest of Maduro, Maduro would give everything up. I always say it here, right, that... Let me take this off. It's better so I can talk. If the United States captures Maduro alive, go there and bam, capture the guy, which isn't hard. We're already 145 kilometers from Venezuela. He'll give everything up. And Elisa says right here.
We're already feeling it. This stance that Lula has taken in recent days, these statements that no one will boss Brazil around, that he knew how to speak firmly, this is clearly showing his anguish, his despair over the fact that Maduro could be captured at any moment, right? Taking into consideration that the American authorities want him alive, right? So that he also gets to the point of trying to negotiate a plea bargain.
See, that's what we were talking about here. If you stay or run, you're in trouble either way. That's why Inácio made those absurd statements this weekend. No one here will talk tough. No president will boss around our country, Brazil. Man, such a lowly guy. Look, we have to change a lot of things here. Share this video a lot on WhatsApp, Telegram, Facebook, hit that like button, and come join our family by subscribing to the channel. Use this opportunity. Turn on notifications for our latest videos. I'll return soon with more updates on the Parents and Children channel.